The 6:47 a.m. express to Manhattan was pulling away from Penn Station Platform 7 when Naomi Thompson made the choice that would cost her everything. The elderly white man collapsed 3 feet from the closing train doors, walker clattering against concrete, knees buckling, body folding like his legs had simply stopped working. A businessman in a gray suit stepped over the man's legs without breaking stride, checking his watch. A woman with white earbuds didn't even glance down, just adjusted her designer handbag and kept walking. A teenager with a backpack navigated around the collapsed body like it was furniture someone had left in the way. 12 people. Naomi counted them later, replaying the moment in her mind. 12 commuters walked past a dying man without stopping. Naomi's hand was already on the train door, her body halfway through the closing gap. This train would get her to Sterling Financial Headquarters by 8:15 a.m. for the assistant position interview, $38,000 annually with benefits and health insurance. The job that would stop the eviction notice, pay her mother's nursing home bills, make a dent in $80,000 of student loans crushing her since graduation. 23 years old with a sociology degree and $17 in her checking account. This interview wasn't just an opportunity. It was survival. Comment where you're watching from if you've ever had to make an impossible choice. The old man's pale blue eyes found hers through the crowd. Terrified. Pleading silently for someone, anyone, to see him as a human being instead of an inconvenience. His lips moved without sound. His trembling hand clutched his chest, fingers clawing at his shirt. The train doors sealed shut with a mechanical hiss. Naomi watched through the window as her future accelerated down the tracks, taking with it the only job offer she'd received in 8 months of applications. She dropped to her knees beside the stranger, her interview clothes, the only professional outfit she owned, pressing into filthy platform concrete stained with old coffee and who knew what else. "Sir, stay with me. I'm calling for help. Can you hear me?" His eyes locked onto hers. Recognition of being seen, finally, after a dozen people had treated him like trash to be avoided. Naomi pulled out her phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. Ambulance to Penn Station, Platform 7. Elderly male, approximately 70 years old, possible heart attack or stroke, collapsed, breathing shallow, pulse weak. She gave the dispatcher details while loosening the man's collar and checking his vital signs with the basic first aid training she'd gotten from a community center years ago. "Sir, what's your name?" Naomi asked, keeping her voice calm despite the panic screaming through her chest. "William," he managed to whisper, each word costing him visible effort. "William Blackwood. William, the ambulance is coming. You're going to be okay. I'm staying right here with you." She held his hand, cold, trembling, the hand of someone who thought he was dying alone in a crowd of strangers who didn't care. Around them, the morning commute continued. Thousands of people rushing to jobs and meetings and lives that mattered to them, stepping around Naomi and William like they were obstacles in the flow of more important things. The ambulance arrived in 8 agonizing minutes that felt like hours. Paramedics burst through the platform entrance with equipment and urgent efficiency. They stabilized William, checked his vitals, loaded him onto a stretcher with practiced speed. "You're riding with us?" one paramedic asked Naomi. "I'm not family. I saw him fall." "You probably saved his life," the lead paramedic said, a young black man whose name tag read Martinez. "Another 5 minutes without intervention and we'd be having a very different conversation right now." Most people would have kept walking. You didn't. That matters. They loaded William into the ambulance. Naomi stood on the empty platform watching the vehicle disappear into New York traffic, its sirens fading into the city noise. She checked her phone. 7:03 a.m. The interview had been scheduled for 8:30 a.m. She'd missed her train, but maybe she could catch the next express. No. The next Manhattan train wasn't until 7:55. That would get her to Sterling Financial at 9:10 at the earliest. 40 minutes late to an interview where first impressions meant everything. With hands that wouldn't stop shaking, Naomi called Sterling Financial. A receptionist answered on the second ring, professional and cheerful. "This is Naomi Thompson. I had an interview scheduled for 8:30 this morning, but I missed my train because I stopped to help someone having a medical emergency. Is there any way we could reschedule? I'm sorry, but the position has been filled." The receptionist's voice shifted from cheerful to sympathetic but final. "We had 3 other qualified candidates interview earlier this week. The hiring manager made her decision last night. Your interview this morning was actually a courtesy follow-up." The words hit like a physical blow. So even if I'd made it on time. I'm not supposed to say this, but yes. The job was already taken. I'm truly sorry, Miss Thompson. I hope the person you helped is okay. The line went dead. Naomi sat on a metal bench bolted to the platform and cried. Not quiet, dignified tears. Ugly, body-shaking sobs born from 8 months of rejection letters, 273 failed job applications, and the absolute certainty that doing the right thing had just destroyed her last chance at keeping her mother housed and herself off the street. People walked past her crying the same way they'd walked past William dying. Invisible. Irrelevant. Inconvenient. At 7:45 a.m., Naomi forced herself to stand and walk to the subway. She had no job to go to, no interview to prepare for, no reason to be in Manhattan. She went home to her studio apartment in Washington Heights, the apartment she could no longer afford, in the building she'd be evicted from any day now. The orange notice was taped to her door. 72-hour notice to vacate premises. Failure to pay rent totaling $3,400. Inside, she flipped the light switch. Nothing. The electricity company had finally followed through on their disconnection threat after 8 weeks of unpaid bills. Her refrigerator wasn't humming. The clock on her microwave was black. Naomi sat in her dark apartment still wearing the clothes she'd ruined helping William Blackwood and felt the full weight of what her choice had cost. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Probably debt collectors. She almost didn't answer. Miss Naomi Thompson. A woman's voice, cold and administrative. Yes. Patricia Harmon, Director of Patient Services at Sunrise Gardens Nursing Home. I'm calling about your mother, Diane Thompson. Your account is 63 days past due with an outstanding balance of $11,200. Our policy allows maximum 30 days delinquency before discharge proceedings. You're over a month past that threshold. I had a job interview today that would have. You said that 6 weeks ago. Patricia's voice held zero sympathy. Miss Thompson, we're a business, not charity. If payment isn't received within 7 days, we will discharge your mother. You'll need alternative arrangements for her care. She has advanced Alzheimer's. She needs specialized care. You can't just. 7 days. $11,200. Or Diane leaves this facility. Patricia hung up. Naomi stared at her phone. 72 hours until eviction. 7 days until her mother was on the street. $17 in her bank account. No job prospects. No electricity. No food in a refrigerator that didn't work anyway. She grabbed her laptop. A 5-year-old Dell that barely functioned, and walked to Quick Cash pawn shop on Amsterdam Avenue. The owner offered $90. She took it without negotiating. Used $23 to buy bread, peanut butter, and canned soup that wouldn't spoil without refrigeration. That left $84 to survive until she found work. At 8:47 p.m., her phone rang again. Unknown number. She almost ignored it but answered because unemployed people couldn't afford to miss calls. Miss Naomi Thompson. A man's voice, professional and formal. Yes. My name is Jonathan Pierce. I'm an attorney with Pierce and Associates in Manhattan. I'm calling on behalf of my client, William Harrison Blackwood. I understand you helped Mr. Blackwood during a medical emergency this morning at Penn Station. Naomi's mind raced to worst-case scenarios. Medical bills. Lawsuits. Somehow she'd done something wrong. I just called 911 and stayed with him until paramedics arrived. I didn't. Miss Thompson, please, you're not in any trouble. Jonathan's voice gentled. Mr. Blackwood survived his heart attack because of your quick response and willingness to help when others wouldn't. He's recovering at Mount Sinai Hospital, and he specifically requested to meet you. There's a matter of significant importance he needs to discuss. Why would he want to meet me? I don't even know him. Comment where you're watching from if you're as confused as Naomi right now. That's something Mr. Blackwood prefers to explain in person. I'm calling to schedule a meeting at my office tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. The address is 500 5th Avenue, 42nd floor. Jonathan paused. I strongly encourage you to attend, Miss Thompson. I can assure you this meeting will change your circumstances considerably. Naomi looked around her dark apartment at the eviction notice on her table, at the empty refrigerator, at the life that was collapsing around her. Change my circumstances how? I'm not at liberty to discuss details over the phone. But I can tell you that Mr. Blackwood is a man of significant means and considerable influence. He doesn't forget acts of genuine kindness. Will you attend? Train fare to Manhattan was $15 round trip. That would leave her with $69 until she found work. But something in Jonathan Pierce's voice suggested this wasn't a trap or a scam. It was something else. Something that might actually matter. Yes, Naomi said. I'll be there. Excellent. 10 a.m. sharp. Ask for me at reception. And Miss Thompson, thank you for what you did today. William Blackwood is a good man. The world needs more people like you who stop when others keep walking. After hanging up, Naomi sat in darkness wondering what kind of meeting could possibly change circumstances that included 3 days until homelessness and 7 days until her mother had nowhere to go. She had no idea that William Harrison Blackwood was worth $47 million. Or that tomorrow morning, he was going to offer her something that would transform everything she thought she knew about her worth, her future, and what one act of selfless compassion could create when witnessed by someone who understood its value. But first, she had to find $15 for train fare. And survive one more night in an apartment with no power, no food, and an eviction notice counting down to zero. Naomi counted out $15 from the $84 she had left, the money from pawning her laptop, the last valuable thing she'd owned. Train fare to Manhattan would leave her with $69 to survive on until she found work. If this meeting with William Blackwood's attorney turned out to be nothing, she'd just wasted money she desperately needed on what might be a wild goose chase. But something about Jonathan Pierce's voice on the phone last night had sounded genuine. Not the fake sympathy of debt collectors or the bureaucratic coldness of Patricia Harmon. Real concern. Real sincerity. So she took the risk. The 9:15 a.m. train to Manhattan was half empty compared to yesterday's rush-hour chaos. Naomi sat by the window wearing the same interview clothes from yesterday, still stained with Penn Station concrete dirt because she had no money for dry cleaning and no working washing machine in her apartment without electricity. She'd done her best to spot clean the worst marks with hand soap and cold water, but the blazer and slacks still looked worn and desperate. Just like her. The glass tower at 500 5th Avenue made Naomi feel small before she even entered. Pierce & Associates occupied the 42nd floor, a corporate law firm where the elevator alone was nicer than her entire apartment. Polished brass, soft lighting, classical music playing through hidden speakers. The lobby had marble floors, modern art on the walls, and fresh flower arrangements that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Naomi Thompson for Jonathan Pierce, she told the receptionist, trying to keep her voice steady and professional despite feeling completely out of place. The receptionist, a polished young woman in an expensive suit, smiled warmly. Mr. Pierce is expecting you. Conference room 3, down the hall on your left. Can I get you coffee or tea? No thank you, I'm fine. Naomi followed the corridor past offices where lawyers worked at mahogany desks surrounded by law books and city views. Jonathan Pierce met her at the conference room door. Mid-50s, silver hair, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, expensive suit that fit perfectly. Miss Thompson, thank you for coming. Please, have a seat. The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Naomi had lived in New York for 3 years and never once been inside a building where people worked in rooms with views like this. She sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than her security deposit. Before we discuss anything else, I need to be transparent with you. Jonathan sat across from her, his expression serious. After our call last night, I had investigators look into your background. I know that feels invasive, and I apologize, but William Blackwood insisted on understanding who you are beyond one act of kindness. Naomi's stomach tightened. What did you find? That you graduated from CUNY 3 years ago with a degree in sociology. That you've applied to 273 jobs in 8 months and been rejected by all of them. That you're facing eviction for unpaid rent. That your mother Diane has advanced Alzheimer's and is in a nursing home you can't afford. That you have $80,000 in student loan debt. Jonathan's voice gentled. And that despite all of this, yesterday morning you missed the one job interview that might have saved you, because you stopped to help a stranger. Comment where you're watching from if you've ever felt this exposed. Tears burned Naomi's eyes. Having her desperation laid out like evidence in a legal case made her feel naked and ashamed. Why would you investigate me like that? Because William Blackwood doesn't make decisions lightly, especially decisions involving millions of dollars. He needed to know if your act yesterday was character or opportunity, if you helped him because you're genuinely compassionate or because you somehow knew who he was. Jonathan pulled out a leather notebook. This is William's. He asked me to show you. The notebook fell open to 2 columns. Left side, 12 names with timestamps and physical descriptions. Kenneth Morrison, 6:47 a.m., stepped over me. Sarah Chen, 6:47 a.m., walked around me without looking. David Porter, 6:48 a.m., saw me fall, kept walking. 12 people documented. 12 people who'd ignored a dying man. The right column had one name. Naomi Thompson, 6:47 a.m. Mr. Trained to help me. Stayed until paramedics arrived. Called 911. Held my hand. Only person who stopped. William was conscious through most of it, Jonathan explained. He documented everyone who walked past him like he was invisible. Then he documented you, the only person who treated him like a human being worth saving. Naomi stared at her name written in William's shaking handwriting. I don't understand. Was yesterday some kind of test? Yes. Jonathan met her eyes directly. William Harrison Blackwood is 73 years old. Retired federal judge. Widower. Worth approximately $47 million. 3 months ago, he was diagnosed with terminal heart disease. Doctors gave him 6 months to live. The cardiac event you witnessed yesterday was his second major attack. It could have killed him. $47 million. Naomi's breath caught. William has been preparing for death deliberately, Jonathan continued. He planned to leave his personal fortune to the Blackwood Foundation, a non-profit he founded that provides legal aid and college scholarships to underserved communities. The foundation's current endowment is $17 million. But William struggled with one question: who should run the foundation after he's gone? Who has the character to use $17 million to help people with dignity instead of condescension? I still don't understand what this has to do with me. William spent 30 years as a federal judge watching people reveal their character under pressure. He believes character isn't about what you do when people are watching, it's about what you do when walking away costs you nothing and helping costs you everything. Jonathan leaned forward. Yesterday morning, he deliberately put himself in a situation where he needed help. He wanted to see how many people would stop when it meant sacrificing their own time and priorities. 12 people walked past him. You were the only one who stopped. The only one who passed his test. That's insane, Naomi said. He could have died. He was dying anyway. He decided to use his remaining time testing humanity. Looking for someone who proved that genuine compassion still exists. Jonathan pulled out a legal document. And he found you. Which is why I'm authorized to offer you a position. He slid the contract across the table. Executive Director of the Blackwood Foundation. Salary of $120,000 annually with full benefits. You would oversee all foundation operations, grant-making, scholarship programs, legal aid initiatives. You'd manage a staff of 8 and an operating budget of approximately $2 million per year from the endowment. You'd report directly to William during his remaining time, and to the Board of Trustees after his death. Naomi couldn't process the words. $120,000. She'd been applying for jobs paying $38,000 and been told she wasn't qualified. Now a dying millionaire wanted to put her in charge of $17 million because she'd helped him during a heart attack. This doesn't make sense. I don't have nonprofit experience. I've never managed anyone. I have a sociology degree but no relevant work history. Why would anyone trust me with this? Because William doesn't want someone who knows how to run a nonprofit efficiently. He wants someone who understands what it feels like to need help desperately. Someone who knows that compassion matters more than competence, that dignity matters more than efficiency. Jonathan's expression softened. Your sociology degree is perfect for understanding the communities the foundation serves. Your lack of experience means you haven't learned the cynicism that comes from working in philanthropy too long. And your character, proven yesterday morning, is exactly what William spent 30 years searching for on the bench and rarely finding. I can't, this is too much. The contract also includes an immediate signing bonus. Jonathan pointed to a clause. $50,000. $25,000 paid today if you accept the position. $25,000 on your first official day of work. You can use it however you need, rent, your mother's nursing home, personal debt. No restrictions. $50,000. Enough to pay Patricia Harmon the $11,200 and stop her mother's discharge. Enough to pay her back rent and stop the eviction. Enough to breathe for the first time in months. Why would he do this? Naomi whispered. He doesn't even know me. He knows the only thing that matters to him. That when helping him cost you everything and walking away cost you nothing, you chose to help. That's who William Blackwood wants running his foundation. Someone who understands that kindness isn't convenient, it's costly. And that the people who help anyway are the ones who deserve resources to help more. Naomi looked at the contract with its impossible salary and life-changing bonus and felt like she'd fallen through a mirror into some alternate reality where doing the right thing actually mattered. There's one condition, Jonathan added. William wants to meet you in person before you sign anything. He's at Mount Sinai Hospital, stable but fragile. He wants to look you in the eye, hear your voice, make sure you understand what he's offering and why. Are you willing to meet him this afternoon? Naomi thought about the 72-hour eviction notice on her door. About her mother facing discharge in 7 days. About 8 months of rejection and poverty and the crushing certainty that she was worthless because the job market kept telling her so. And about William Blackwood, who deliberately tested humanity and decided she was the one person who'd passed. Yes, Naomi said. I'll meet him. 2 hours later, Naomi stood outside room 847 at Mount Sinai Hospital with Jonathan Pierce beside her, terrified of what came next. Because inside that room was a dying millionaire who'd orchestrated his own near-death experience to find someone worth trusting. And who'd decided that someone was a 23-year-old broke woman with $17 to her name and nothing to offer except the character she'd proven on a train platform when it cost her everything. Jonathan knocked once, then opened the door. William Harrison Blackwood sat propped up in bed surrounded by monitors and 4 lines, oxygen tubes in his nose, pale and frail but fully alert. His blue eyes, the same terrified eyes that had pleaded with Naomi yesterday, now looked at her with recognition and something else. Gratitude. "Miss Thompson," William said, his voice weak but steady. "Thank you for coming. And thank you for saving my life. Please, sit down. We have important matters to discuss." Naomi sat in a chair beside his bed, her hands shaking. "Jonathan told you about the position?" William asked. "Yes, sir. And you think I'm crazy for offering it to you? I think I don't understand why you trust someone you don't know with $17 million. William smiled, tired but genuine. "I know everything that matters about you, Miss Thompson. I know that yesterday morning, you had a choice between saving yourself and saving a stranger. You chose the stranger. That tells me more about your character than any resume or job history ever could." He reached for her hand with trembling fingers. Naomi took it, the same hand she'd held yesterday while waiting for paramedics. "I'm dying," William said simply. "Maybe weeks, maybe months, but not long. I need to know my life's work continues with someone who understands what I was trying to do. Not charity, dignity. Not handouts, opportunity. Helping people the way I wish someone had helped me when I was young and desperate and convinced I was worthless." Tears ran down Naomi's cheeks. "Will you take the position?" William asked. "Will you help me make sure my foundation actually helps people instead of just processing paperwork?" Naomi thought about yesterday morning. About the choice that had cost her everything and was somehow giving her back more than she'd lost. "Yes," she whispered. "I'll do it." William squeezed her hand. "Then welcome to the Blackwood Foundation, Miss Thompson. Your first task is to survive. Use that bonus to fix your immediate problems. Start work Monday. And remember, you earned this through character, not luck." After leaving the hospital, Naomi stood on the sidewalk with a signed contract in her hands and $25,000 being wired to her account. In 3 days, she'd gone from missing a train to inheriting a future. All because one dying man had tested humanity. And she'd been the only one who'd passed. The $25,000 hit Naomi's account at 4:17 p.m. on Thursday afternoon. She stared at her phone banking app, refreshing 3 times to make sure the number was real. $25,000. More money than she'd ever seen in one place in her entire life. Her first call was to Sunrise Gardens Nursing Home. Patricia Harmon answered with her usual coldness. "This is Naomi Thompson. I'm calling about Diane Thompson's account. I'm ready to pay the full outstanding balance of $11,200. Silence on the line. Then Patricia's voice shifted from dismissive to professional. "I'll transfer you to billing to process payment. Will you be paying by credit card or wire transfer? Today. I want a receipt confirming payment and written confirmation that my mother's residency is secure." Naomi's voice was steady, stronger than she'd ever heard it sound. "And Mrs. Harmon? I want a meeting scheduled for next week to discuss the quality of care Diane's receiving. I'll be evaluating whether Sunrise Gardens is the right facility for her long-term needs." She hung up before Patricia could respond. 2 months ago, Naomi had begged Patricia for mercy. Today, she had leverage. Money created power, even when you were still learning how to use it. The second call was to her landlord, Marcus Holloway, who'd posted the eviction notice on her door 48 hours ago. "Mr. Holloway, this is Naomi Thompson in 2C. I'm prepared to pay the full back rent of $3,400 plus next month's rent in advance. $3,900 total. Today. Miss Thompson, the eviction process has already begun. Which means it can be stopped if payment is received before the 72-hour deadline expires. I have 16 hours left. I can wire the money within the hour. Naomi took a breath. But I need something in exchange. The electrical connection that was shut off needs to be restored immediately, and I want a written agreement that my rent payment history is cleared and won't affect any future lease renewals. Marcus was quiet. Then. Done. Send the wire to the property management account. I'll have electricity restored by end of business today and the lease agreement on your door by tomorrow morning. By 6 p.m., Naomi had paid both debts, restored her electricity, bought groceries that filled her refrigerator for the first time in months, and still had over $10,000 left. She sat in her apartment with the lights on, actually on, after 2 days of darkness, and cried from relief and disbelief and the surreal reality that helping a stranger had somehow saved her life. Comment where you're watching from if you're crying with her right now. Monday morning, Naomi stood outside the Blackwood Foundation offices in Lower Manhattan wearing new professional clothes she'd bought over the weekend. Not designer labels, she couldn't bring herself to spend that kind of money yet, but clean, appropriate clothes that fit properly and didn't carry stains from train station concrete. Navy blazer. White blouse. Black slacks. She looked like someone who belonged in an office instead of someone barely surviving. The foundation occupied the third floor of a renovated brownstone. Small but elegant. Professional but not ostentatious. Exactly what Naomi imagined a nonprofit focused on helping people would look like. She took the stairs to the third floor and pushed open the glass door marked Blackwood Foundation. 8 people stopped working and turned to stare at her. The new executive director they'd been told about but hadn't met. The 23-year-old woman with zero nonprofit experience who was somehow now their boss. A man in his mid-40s approached, white, polished, wearing an expensive suit and an expression that mixed skepticism with barely concealed hostility. You must be Naomi Thompson. I'm Gregory Hartford, operations manager. We need to talk. He led her to a corner office, William's office, now technically hers, and closed the door with deliberate firmness. I'm going to be direct because I don't believe in wasting time, Gregory said, not bothering to sit. I've worked for the Blackwood Foundation for 8 years. I built our grant-making systems, our scholarship evaluation process, our legal aid partnerships. I expected to be promoted to executive director when William stepped down. Instead, he hired you, someone with no experience, no track record, no qualifications beyond being in the right place at the right time. I understand this is difficult, Naomi began. Do you? Because I don't think you understand anything about running a foundation. This isn't charity work where good intentions matter more than results. We manage $17 million in assets. We have legal obligations, fiduciary responsibilities, donor relationships that took years to build. One mistake, one poor decision, and we could lose our nonprofit status or our funding. Gregory's voice hardened. So let me be clear, I'm watching everything you do. If you make decisions that jeopardize this foundation, I'll go directly to the board of trustees. William might have been charmed by your sob story, but I answer to legal and financial realities. He left before Naomi could respond, closing the door with controlled force that was somehow worse than slamming it. Naomi sat in William's chair, her chair now, and felt imposter syndrome crash over her like a wave. Gregory was right. She had no idea what she was doing. She'd been hired based on character, not competence. What if that wasn't enough? A knock on the door. A young black woman in her late 20s poked her head in. Miss Thompson. I'm Keisha Williams, program coordinator. I just wanted to say welcome, and if you need anything, I'm happy to help. Gregory can be intense. But most of us are really excited to have fresh leadership. Thank you, Naomi said, grateful for even that small kindness. Over the next 2 weeks, Naomi learned the foundation's operations through brutal immersion. She reviewed every grant application, every scholarship file, every legal aid case. She met with program officers, financial advisors, the board of trustees. She visited scholarship recipients and families receiving legal help. And she discovered something that made her angry. The Blackwood Foundation was helping people, technically. Processing applications, awarding scholarships, providing legal consultations. But it operated with cold efficiency that stripped away dignity. Scholarship interviews felt like interrogations. Grant applications required documentation that homeless families couldn't possibly provide. Legal aid came with judgment about how people had ended up in their situations. Gregory had built systems that prioritized process over people. That protected the foundation's reputation more than the people it was supposed to serve. In her third week, Naomi called a staff meeting. All 8 employees gathered in the conference room. Gregory sat at the far end with arms crossed and expression that said he was humoring her. "I've spent 2 weeks learning how we operate," Naomi began. "And I've decided we're going to make changes. Significant changes." Gregory's eyebrows raised. "What kind of changes?" "Starting with our scholarship program. We currently require applicants to write essays, provide 3 letters of recommendation, submit tax returns proving financial need, and interview in person. Most of the students we're supposed to help can't meet those requirements. They're working multiple jobs, taking care of siblings, dealing with housing instability. Our application process is designed for middle-class students with support systems, not the kids who actually need help most. Those requirements ensure we award scholarships to serious students who'll succeed," Gregory countered. "No, they ensure we award scholarships to students who can navigate bureaucracy." "That's not the same thing." Naomi pulled up a file on the projector. "This is Marcus Chen. Applied for our scholarship last year. Perfect grades, incredible story, raised by grandmother in Chinatown while working night shifts at a restaurant. Got rejected because he couldn't get 3 letters of recommendation. He didn't have teachers who knew him well because he missed classes for work. We rejected someone we were specifically supposed to help because he couldn't perform the middle-class rituals we demanded." She looked around the room. "We're going to redesign every program this foundation runs. Make them accessible to people who actually need help instead of people who are good at asking for help. And we're going to do it with dignity, treating everyone who comes to us like they deserve respect, not interrogation." Gregory stood abruptly. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. You've been here 3 weeks and you want to dismantle systems that took years to build. You're going to destroy this foundation's credibility." "No," Naomi said quietly. "I'm going to make sure it actually fulfills William's mission. You're welcome to help with that. Or you can keep protecting systems that serve you instead of the people we're supposed to serve." After the meeting, Naomi returned to her office and found William had called. She called him back at the hospital. "I heard you challenged Gregory today," William said, his voice weak but pleased. "Good. He needs to be challenged. He's competent but he's forgotten that competence without compassion is just efficient cruelty. He thinks I'm going to destroy the foundation. Maybe you will destroy the foundation he built. That's exactly what I'm hoping for." William coughed, recovering slowly. "Build something better, Naomi. Something that would have helped you when you needed it. That's why I hired you." After hanging up, Naomi looked at the stack of scholarship applications on her desk. 37 students who needed help. She was going to make sure they got it. Without jumping through hoops designed by people who'd never been desperate. William Harrison Blackwood collapsed during a board meeting on a Tuesday afternoon in late October, exactly 6 weeks after Naomi had started at the foundation. One moment he was discussing the new scholarship redesign she'd proposed. The next, he was on the floor with Jonathan Pierce calling 911 while Naomi held his hand and told him to stay with her the way she had on that train platform 2 months ago. The ambulance took him to Mount Sinai. Emergency surgery. Triple bypass that his weakened heart barely survived. The surgeon told Naomi and Jonathan what they already knew: William had weeks left, maybe days. His body was shutting down piece by piece. In the ICU, hooked to machines keeping him alive, William was barely conscious. But when Naomi visited him Thursday morning, his eyes opened and focused on her with urgent clarity. "Jonathan," William whispered. "Need Jonathan. Now." Jonathan Pierce arrived within 30 minutes, carrying his leather briefcase. He closed the ICU room door and pulled out documents Naomi had never seen. "I revised my will 3 weeks ago," William said, each word costing him visible effort. "Naomi needs to know. Before I die. Before Gregory finds out." Jonathan spread papers on the bedside table. The original will left William's entire personal estate, $47 million, to the Blackwood Foundation as an expanded endowment. Gregory Hartford was designated as a trustee with significant authority over how those funds were distributed. "Not anymore," William said. Jonathan pulled out the revised will. "The new will splits the estate differently. Naomi Thompson receives $30 million personally, with no restrictions on how she uses it. The remaining $17 million goes to the foundation, but Naomi has full control as permanent executive director with board authority." Naomi couldn't breathe. $30 million. "William, I can't. This is too much." "You earned it," William interrupted. "You proved you understand what matters. Character. Dignity. Helping people without making them beg." He coughed, weak and painful. "Gregory doesn't know yet. But he'll find out when I die. Jonathan is legally required to notify all beneficiaries when a will changes. He's going to challenge it," Jonathan said grimly. "Claim undue influence, that Naomi manipulated you, that you weren't mentally competent. Will contests can take years and cost millions in legal fees. Comment where you're watching from if you're worried about what's coming." "Let him try," William whispered. "I documented everything. Video testimony. Letters explaining my reasoning. Medical evaluations proving mental competence. He won't win. But Naomi needs to be prepared." "Why would you do this?" Naomi asked. "The foundation could use all $47 million. The foundation needs you more than it needs money. And you need resources to survive what's coming." William's grip on her hand tightened with surprising strength. "Gregory has been embezzling from the foundation for 3 years. Small amounts, carefully hidden. I discovered it 6 months ago and documented everything. I kept him employed so I could build an airtight case. You knew he was stealing and you kept him. I needed proof. And I needed to see if he'd stop when given the chance. He didn't. He got bolder." William's voice hardened despite his weakness. "He's stolen nearly $400,000. When I die and he discovers the will, he'll attack you publicly. Try to destroy your credibility to contest the inheritance. That's when you release the embezzlement evidence. Destroy his credibility before he destroys yours." 2 days later, William Harrison Blackwood died peacefully at 3:22 a.m. with Naomi holding his hand. His last words were, "Help people the way I wish someone had helped me." The funeral was scheduled for Saturday at Riverside Church. 200 people attended, judges, lawyers, foundation donors, scholarship recipients whose lives William had changed. Gregory Hartford sat in the front row, his expression appropriately somber. He'd been notified by Jonathan Pierce the day before about the will change. About being removed as trustee. About Naomi inheriting $30 million. During the eulogy, a beautiful tribute from a former law clerk, Gregory suddenly stood up. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Gregory said, his voice carrying across the church. "But I can't stay silent while everyone celebrates William Blackwood's legacy without addressing a serious concern. That concern is Naomi Thompson." The church went silent. Naomi froze in her pew. "William was a brilliant man," Gregory continued. "But in his final months, he was vulnerable. Sick. Possibly not thinking clearly. And Naomi Thompson, a woman he'd known for less than 3 months, somehow convinced him to leave her $30 million. That's not Generosity. That's elder exploitation. That's a con artist targeting a dying man. Camera phones rose throughout the church. Journalists attending to cover William's death captured every word. I'm calling for a full investigation into how Miss Thompson manipulated William Blackwood into rewriting his will. And I'm formally contesting the will on grounds of undue influence and lack of mental competence. Gregory looked directly at Naomi. You might have fooled William, but you won't fool the courts. He walked out of the church. Within 2 hours, news outlets were running the story. Executive director accused of exploiting dying millionaire. Con artist allegedly manipulates judge for $30 million inheritance. By evening, Naomi's name was trending on social media with hashtags calling her a thief, a manipulator, worse. And her reputation, built over 8 weeks of hard work, was destroyed in 8 minutes by a man who'd been stealing from the foundation for 3 years. Jonathan Pierce called her at 9 p.m. Gregory filed the will contest this afternoon. This is going to get ugly. Are you ready for war? Naomi thought about William's last words. About helping people. About dignity. I'm ready, she said. Because Gregory Hartford had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He'd started a war with someone who had nothing left to lose and William Blackwood's evidence to fight back with. The Monday after William's funeral, Naomi arrived at the Blackwood Foundation offices to find her access card disabled. The glass door that had opened for her every morning for 2 months now blinked red and stayed locked. Gregory Hartford opened it from inside, his expression cold and professional. The Board of Trustees held an emergency meeting yesterday. Given the circumstances, the will contest and questions about your relationship with William, they voted to place you on administrative leave. I'll be serving as interim director until the legal matters are resolved. You can't just lock me out, Naomi said. William appointed me executive director. William is dead. The board governs the foundation now, and the board has concerns about your judgment and potential conflicts of interest. Gregory stepped aside to let her enter. You have 30 minutes to collect personal items from your office. Security will escort you out. Inside, the foundation staff avoided eye contact. Keisha Williams, the program coordinator who'd welcomed Naomi on her first day, stared at her desk. No one spoke. No one defended her. They'd all read the news coverage accusing her of manipulating William. In her office, William's office, which she'd occupied for exactly 8 weeks, Naomi found her desk already cleared. Files she'd been working on were gone. The photo of her mother she'd placed on the shelf was in a cardboard box along with her nameplate and the few personal items she'd brought. Gregory appeared in the doorway. The board also voted to freeze the $25,000 balance of your signing bonus. Given the circumstances, paying you further compensation while under investigation for undue influence seemed inappropriate. You'll receive the funds if and when the will contest resolves in your favor. $25,000. Money Naomi had been counting on to pay her rent, her mother's nursing home, her mounting legal bills from attorneys responding to Gregory's accusations. You're destroying me financially so I can't fight you legally, Naomi said quietly. I'm protecting the foundation's assets from someone who may have obtained her position through fraud. Gregory's voice carried no emotion. Jonathan Pierce will contact you regarding the will contest proceedings. Until then, you're not to contact foundation staff, donors, or scholarship recipients. Any violation will be considered interference with foundation operations. A security guard appeared behind Gregory. Middle-aged, uncomfortable, clearly hating this assignment. Miss Thompson, I need to escort you out. Naomi carried her box of belongings through the office she'd worked so hard to transform. Past the scholarship files where she'd redesigned application processes to actually help desperate students. Past the legal aid program she'd been restructuring to serve families with dignity. Past Keisha's desk, where the younger woman finally looked up with tears in her eyes and mouthed, "I'm sorry." On the sidewalk outside, holding a cardboard box containing 8 weeks of her professional life, Naomi called Jonathan Pierce. Gregory locked me out. Froze my bonus payment. Banned me from contacting anyone connected to the foundation. I know. The board notified me an hour ago. Jonathan's voice was grim. They're well within their legal rights given the circumstances. We need to meet. There are developments you need to know about. They met at Jonathan's office that afternoon. He looked exhausted, older than he'd seemed 2 weeks ago. Comment where you're watching from if you're feeling Naomi's desperation. Gregory's will contest filing is strategically brilliant, Jonathan said, spreading legal documents across his conference table. He's not just claiming you manipulated William. He's arguing that William wasn't mentally competent during his final months due to his illness and medication. He's got 3 witnesses, Foundation staff members, willing to testify that William was confused, making impulsive decisions, showing signs of cognitive decline. That's a lie. William was completely lucid. I know. But Gregory's building a narrative that sounds plausible to people who didn't know William. Terminal illness. Strong pain medications. A man in his 70s making radical decisions about his estate in his final weeks of life. To a judge who never met William, that could sound like incompetence rather than deliberate choice. Jonathan pulled out another document. He's also filed a lawsuit against you personally for intentional interference with expected inheritance. He's claiming he had a reasonable expectation of becoming a trustee of William's estate based on years of service, and that you intentionally sabotaged that expectation through manipulation. Can he do that? He can file it. Whether he can win is different. But it ties you up in 2 separate legal proceedings, the will contest and the personal lawsuit. That means 2 sets of attorneys, 2 sets of legal fees, months or years of litigation. Jonathan met her eyes. Naomi, your legal costs are going to exceed $100,000 before this is over. Possibly more. Do you have resources to fight this? Naomi thought about her bank account. The $10,000 remaining from the first half of her signing bonus after paying her debts. The frozen $25,000 she couldn't access. The $30 million inheritance she couldn't touch while the will was contested. I have $10,000, she said quietly. That's it. My firm will work on contingency for the will contest, we get paid when you win. But the personal lawsuit requires separate counsel, and those attorneys won't work for free. You need at least $50,000 to mount an adequate defense. Jonathan rubbed his face. Gregory knows this. He's trying to bankrupt you so you can't afford to fight him. Force you to settle by giving up the inheritance in exchange for him dropping the lawsuits. That evening, Naomi sat in her apartment calculating impossible math. $10,000. Rent was $1,300 monthly. Her mother's nursing home was $3,800 monthly. Utilities, food, phone, transportation. She had maybe 6 weeks before she was broke again, back where she'd started before William changed her life. Her phone rang. Patricia Harmon from Sunrise Gardens. Miss Thompson, I'm calling about some concerning developments. Several family members of other residents have expressed discomfort about your mother living here given the allegations against you. While we haven't made any decisions, I wanted to inform you that we're reviewing whether Diane's continued residency is appropriate given the circumstances. Are you threatening to discharge my mother because of news coverage? Naomi's voice shook with rage and fear. I'm informing you of concerns that could affect future decisions. It might be prudent to explore alternative care arrangements as a precaution. Patricia's tone suggested she was enjoying this. Just a friendly heads up. After hanging up, Naomi sat in darkness, lights off because she was afraid someone might see her through the windows and recognize her from the news, and felt the full weight of what Gregory was doing. He wasn't just contesting a will. He was systematically destroying every aspect of her life. Her job. Her income. Her reputation. Her mother's housing. Her ability to fight back. A text from an unknown number appeared on her phone, You're a thief and everyone knows it. You should kill yourself before the courts send you to prison. Then another, hope you enjoy your stolen money while you can, con artist. Then 10 more. 20. 50. Her phone buzzed continuously with hate messages from strangers who decided she was guilty based on Gregory's accusations. Naomi turned off her phone and cried in the darkness, wondering if William had been wrong about her. If character wasn't enough. If doing the right thing just meant getting destroyed by people who'd never cared about right or wrong in the first place. A knock on her door made her jump. She looked through the peephole expecting her landlord or protesters or police. It was Keisha Williams from the foundation, holding a manila envelope. Naomi opened the door. You're not supposed to contact me. I quit this afternoon, Keisha said. Walked out after watching Gregory celebrate locking you out like he'd won some victory. So technically I'm not foundation staff anymore and I can talk to whoever I want. She handed Naomi the envelope. This is from William. He gave it to me 3 weeks before he died. Made me promise to give it to you if Gregory ever attacked you publicly. He knew this was coming. He prepared for it. Inside the envelope was a letter in William's handwriting and a USB drive. The letter explains everything, Keisha said. The drive contains evidence William spent 6 months gathering. Video testimony. Financial records. Proof of things Gregory's been doing that will destroy his credibility completely when you release it. William told me to tell you, don't release it until Gregory fully commits to his lies. Let him build his case. Then use this to demolish him so thoroughly he can never recover. After Keisha left, Naomi read William's letter through tears. Naomi, if Keisha is giving you this, Gregory has attacked you the way I knew he would. He's calling you a con artist. Claiming you manipulated me. Trying to destroy your credibility so he can steal the inheritance I meant for you. Don't let him win. The USB drive contains proof of his embezzlement, nearly $400,000 stolen from families we were supposed to help. I documented everything. Use it when the time is right. Destroy him. And remember, you didn't manipulate me. You saved me. Never forget that. William. Naomi plugged the USB drive into her laptop. Video files. Bank records. Emails. Documented evidence of 3 years of theft. She called Jonathan Pierce. I have William's evidence. When do we use it? Not yet, Jonathan said. Gregory's holding a press conference Friday to present his case against you publicly. We let him commit to his narrative on camera. Then we hold our own press conference Monday and release everything. But Naomi, be prepared. The next 4 days are going to be brutal. Can you survive 4 more days of attacks? Naomi thought about William holding her hand on that train platform. About his last words, help people the way I wish someone had helped me. Yes, she said. I can survive 4 days. Because Gregory Hartford was about to learn that destroying someone with nothing left to lose just meant creating someone with nothing left to fear. And Naomi Thompson had 4 days' worth of evidence that would end his career forever. Gregory Hartford's press conference was held at the Roosevelt Hotel on Friday afternoon. 20 journalists filled the conference room with cameras and recording devices. Naomi watched the live stream from Jonathan Pierce's office, her hands clenched so tight her nails drew blood from her palms. Gregory stood at the podium wearing an expensive suit and an expression of moral righteousness. I'm here today to present evidence that William Harrison Blackwood was manipulated during his final months by someone who exploited his vulnerability for financial gain. For 30 minutes, Gregory built his case. He showed the timeline of Naomi's employment, hired weeks after meeting William, promoted to executive director with 0 experience, named primary beneficiary of a $47 million estate after knowing him less than 3 months. He presented testimony from foundation staff claiming William had been confused and erratic in his final weeks. He displayed the humanity test notebook as proof the train station rescue was orchestrated rather than spontaneous. This is a textbook case of elder exploitation, Gregory concluded. A vulnerable man, dying and alone, targeted by someone who manufactured a rescue scenario to establish trust, then used that trust to isolate him from longtime colleagues and manipulate him into rewriting his will. William Blackwood deserved better. His legacy deserves better. And I will fight to ensure his true wishes are honored rather than the manipulated decisions of his final incompetent months. The journalists asked questions. Gregory answered each one with practiced sincerity. By the time the press conference ended, social media was filled with renewed accusations against Naomi. The narrative was set. Gregory had won the court of public opinion. Jonathan turned off the live stream. He just committed to every lie on camera in front of 20 journalists. Now we end him. Monday morning, Jonathan Pierce held a counter press conference at the same hotel, same conference room. The same journalists attended, curious about what defense Naomi could possibly offer against Gregory's evidence. Naomi stood at the podium wearing professional clothes and the exhausted dignity of someone who'd survived 4 days of hell. Comment where you're watching from if you're ready for justice. My name is Naomi Thompson. Gregory Hartford has spent the past 2 weeks calling me a con artist, a manipulator, someone who exploited William Blackwood's vulnerability. I'm here to present evidence that every word he said was a lie designed to cover up his own crimes. She clicked the presentation remote. The screen behind her filled with bank records. For 3 years, Gregory Hartford embezzled from the Blackwood Foundation. Small amounts initially, $500 here, $1,000 there. Classified as office expenses, supply purchases, vendor payments. But the vendors didn't exist. The supplies were never delivered. The money went directly into Gregory's personal accounts. Naomi clicked through transactions highlighted in William's meticulous documentation. Total theft, $397,600. Money donated to help families in crisis. Money meant for scholarships. Money stolen by the man now claiming I'm the criminal. The journalists leaned forward, cameras focusing tightly on the evidence. William Blackwood discovered the embezzlement 6 months before he died. He spent those months documenting everything, building an airtight case. He kept Gregory employed specifically to catch him in the act of continuing to steal. Naomi clicked to video testimony William had recorded 3 weeks before his death. This is William explaining in his own words why he chose me and why he knew Gregory would attack me after his death. William's face filled the screen, weak but lucid. I'm recording this testimony on October 15th with 3 physicians present to certify my mental competence. I want it clear, I revised my will of my own free choice and sound mind. I chose Naomi Thompson as my primary beneficiary because she demonstrated selfless character when it cost her everything. Gregory Hartford will contest this will because I'm removing him as trustee and exposing his embezzlement. He'll claim Naomi manipulated me. He's lying. And I've documented 3 years of his theft to prove it. The video played for 8 minutes. William explaining the humanity test. His decision-making process. His absolute certainty about Naomi's character and Gregory's corruption. When it ended, Naomi released the final evidence. William also left a letter to be opened only if Gregory contested the will. In it, he predicted everything Gregory would do, the accusations, the public attacks, the lies. Because William Blackwood spent 30 years as a federal judge learning how dishonest people operate. He knew exactly who Gregory Hartford was. And he left me the evidence to prove it. She read William's letter aloud, his final words about character and dignity and helping people the way he wished someone had helped him. The journalists erupted with questions. Gregory Hartford's phone was already ringing from donors demanding answers, from board members realizing they'd been deceived, from prosecutors wanting to discuss embezzlement charges. By Tuesday morning, Gregory had been arrested for theft and fraud. The will contest was withdrawn. The board of trustees publicly apologized to Naomi and reinstated her as executive director with full authority. The narrative flipped overnight. Foundation director vindicated after exposing years of embezzlement. Dying judge's final act, protecting his legacy from corrupt employee. Naomi stood in William's office, her office, and felt the weight of vindication mixed with exhaustion. She'd won. But the cost had been brutal. 5 years after William Blackwood died holding Naomi's hand, the foundation he'd built had transformed into something he would have been proud of. Naomi stood at the window of her office, still William's office in her mind, looking out at Lower Manhattan and thinking about how far she traveled from that train platform where everything had changed. The Blackwood Foundation now operated with a $42 million endowment, William's $30 million inheritance plus $12 million raised through Naomi's donor partnerships. The staff had grown from 8 people to 23. They helped over 10,000 people annually instead of 500. But numbers didn't capture what really mattered. In the conference room, 15 young people sat around the table, the newest recipients of the William Blackwood Character Scholarship. Not traditional academic scholarships. These went to students who demonstrated extraordinary kindness despite personal hardship. Students who'd sacrificed their own needs to help others. Students whose character revealed itself through actions rather than achievements. Naomi entered the room and saw herself reflected in their faces. Young, scared, uncertain whether they deserved the opportunity being offered. She'd been exactly where they were 5 years ago, broke, desperate, convinced the world had no place for people like her. "My name is Naomi Thompson," she began. 5 years ago, I was 23 years old with $17 in my bank account, facing eviction, watching my mother about to be discharged from her nursing home because I couldn't pay her bills. I'd applied to 273 jobs in 8 months and been rejected by every single one. I felt worthless. Like society had looked at me and decided I didn't matter. The students listened with recognition. They knew that feeling. Then one morning, I made a choice. I missed a job interview, the only interview I'd gotten in months, because I stopped to help an elderly man having a heart attack on a train platform. That choice cost me everything I couldn't afford to lose. But it also saved the life of William Harrison Blackwood, who taught me something I want you to understand today. Comment where you're watching from if Naomi's journey inspired you. Naomi pulled up a photo of William on the screen. Judge Blackwood believed character matters more than credentials. That how you treat people when helping them costs you something reveals who you really are. Each of you is here today because you proved that. You helped someone when it meant sacrificing something you needed. You chose compassion over convenience. You passed a test most people fail. She distributed scholarship packets. Full-ride college scholarships, tuition, housing, books, living expenses for 4 years. No loans. No debt. No strings attached beyond maintaining reasonable academic progress. These scholarships aren't loans you have to repay. They're investments in people William believed represented the best of humanity. Use them to build the lives you deserve. And someday, when you've succeeded, help someone else the way you've been helped today. That's how we honor William's legacy, by multiplying kindness instead of hoarding it. After the ceremony, one student approached Naomi. A young black woman named Jessica Martinez, 19 years old, first-generation college student. "Miss Thompson, I need to tell you something. 2 years ago, you helped my grandmother at a grocery store when her card was declined. You paid for her groceries even though you obviously didn't have much money yourself. My grandmother talked about you for weeks. About the young woman who'd been kind when everyone else treated her like an inconvenience. When I saw your story on the news last month, I realized you were the same person. Thank you. You were helping people long before you had money to do it with." Naomi remembered that moment, standing in a checkout line with $20, giving $15 to a crying elderly woman whose card had been declined. She'd forgotten about it until now. "That's who you were before tragedy and money," Jessica continued. "That's who you still are. My grandmother wanted you to know, kindness doesn't require wealth. It just requires heart. And you've always had that. Naomi hugged her and cried tears that mixed grief for William with gratitude for the life he'd given her. That evening, Naomi visited her mother at the new care facility she'd moved Diane to, a beautiful place with gardens and attentive staff where residents were treated like people instead of billing accounts. Diane still didn't recognize her daughter most days. But she smiled when Naomi held her hand, and that was enough. Driving home through Manhattan streets, Naomi thought about the morning she'd missed that train. How one choice had cascaded into everything that followed. How William had been right, character revealed itself when helping cost you everything. The Blackwood Foundation would continue helping people long after Naomi was gone. Scholarships for students who proved kindness. Legal aid for families treated with dignity. Medical debt forgiveness for people drowning in bills they couldn't pay. And every person helped would be told the same thing William had told Naomi: you're not a charity case. You're a human being who deserves help. Take it without shame, use it to build something better, and help someone else when you can. Because kindness wasn't transactional. It was transformational. Naomi Thompson had learned that on a train platform 5 years ago. And she'd spend the rest of her life making sure William Blackwood's final lesson, that character matters more than anything, continued changing lives the way it had changed hers. One act of compassion at a time.